RuneScape is absolutely full to the brim of slang and acronyms and different words that new players are just not going to have a clue what the frick we're saying. You can see some players talking to each other in words and you're thinking, is this a new language? What the frickin' language? Well, what is this? So in this video, I'm going to go through a requested topic of going over some of the most common acronyms and slang words, or just any language that we use as RuneScape players. So newer players can be like, oh, that's what that frickin' means, and understand what we're saying. And also, this could be a fun video for you guys that are experienced in the game to check your knowledge. Do you know all of these? Now, I'm not going to get all of them in here. There's so many of them, but I'm going to go through the most common ones. Comment any down below that you think should have been included. Let's go. Starting off, we have the most common ones, the regular ones, the ones that don't really fit into a category and in no particular order. The most common one you're going to hear through your adventure is going to be GP. GP is gold pieces. There's been many different other ideas of this. Gillen or points, Gillen or pennies, and many other things along the way as well. However, it is gold pieces, even though in game they are called coins. Going alongside this, you will also hear 1K, 1M, and 1B, which is basically 1,000, 1 million, and 1 billion. Then you have the different type of players in the game. You have PVMers or skillers. PVMers are people who will go out and do player versus monster, and then you will have the skillers that are focusing purely just on doing live skills. Probably should have mentioned this one earlier, but RS3 is RuneScape 3 and OSRS is Old School RuneScape. Something you might have heard in a review about RuneScape 3 is MTX. MTX is microtransactions, which of course we have way too many of. OP is something up next, which you may hear in terms of necromancy, which is overpowered. RuneScape 3's combat system is referred to as EOC, which is the evolution of combat. Some of the common things that you will hear is DXP, which is double XP, or double XP weekend, which is now actually 10 days long, where you will get 48 hours worth of game time of double experience. You may hear the words JMod and PMod. This is a Jagex moderator who works for the company. And then you have PMod, which are player moderators that are basically working with Jagex to help keep the game a safe place. Finally, on this list, I'm going to include Rex, which is requirements. So if you're going to do a quest or if you want to kill a boss, you need the Rex to get them. And then, of course, you have the word noob, which isn't just RuneScape slang. Let's be honest, this is everywhere now. Noob is me PVMing. Next, we have the locations in the game, which all have their shortened names, or most of them do. We have the GE, which is the Grand Exchange, where you'll be probably spending a lot of your time in the game. Then we have Fally for Falador, Lumby for Lumbridge, Edge for Edgeville, Prif for Prifdanas, Cath for Catherby, Tav for Tavaly, and Cami for Camelot. And then finally, we have the Wildy for the Wilderness. Now, there's probably some more as well that you guys are thinking, Bennett, there's more than this. We need to talk about this place and this place. These are just the ones that I commonly remember using. But if you can remember the ones that are really common, leave them in the comments. From here, we're going to go on to combat-related ones. So the first one that we have is Revo. Revo is Revolution as a combat style that allows the abilities to be used for you instead of you having to manually press all of them. You have regular Revo, which will just use your basics. Then you have Revo++, which will also include thresholds. Then you have BIS or BIS, which is best in slot, referring to the item slot of the gear that you're going to be using. You have DPS and DPM, which is damage per second or damage per minute. We have Necro, which is referring to the new combat style in Necromancy. Mage, which is for the magic combat style. It's pretty much the same size, but people say Mage instead for some reason. We have Wars, which is referring to Wars Retreat, as well as PVM Hub, referring to the same place. During boss fights, you will have P1, P2, 3, and so on, which is Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, and so on. You may hear the term 40AA thrown around a little bit, which is Fortic auto-attacking. This is where you use an auto-attack while using abilities. You'll hear the word POTS, which is referring to potions, and then there's some names that refer to some potions, such as Brews and OVLS, which stands for Brews for Saradomin and Brews or Guthix Brews, and then the Overloads potion, which is going to boost your stats. You also have DW for Dual Wield, which is for dual wield weapons, 2H for two-handed weapons, and then a few of the other things that you have is Spooned and Broken. Now, these may have been included in the first one, but I figured they come into combat a little bit. Spooned is where you are pretty much just getting insanely lucky and you're being spoon-fed the drops. And then as for Broken, well, Staff of Armador on release, for example, the weapon was insanely broken. So anything that is like super strong, super OP, and maybe is like not intended, it's called Broken. There's many other combat-related ones we could have mentioned, but we'll be here all night, so drop your favorite combat one in the comments and let's move on. So next up, we're going to come to items. Now, there is many items in this game that have been shortened down to make it a lot easier to understand. I'm just going to assume that you guys know the full version of the items, and if you are newer to the game and you're wondering what the hell that item is as well, then you'll have to just quickly check it on the wiki, give it a Google search, otherwise we'll be here all night. But we're going to start off with the good old one, Ami. This is just referring to anything in your amulet slot, but you're going to hear it quite a lot. And then there is the EOF, which goes quite nicely because this is an amulet slot. The EOF is an essence of finality. Then you have FSOA, which is the Fractured Staff of Armadil, the tier 95 manged weapon from Kerapak. You have the Bolg, which is BOLG, the Bow of the Last Guardian from Zamorak, the ROD, which is the Ring of Death, the LOTD, which is the Look of the Dwarves, and then you have the HSR, which is a Hazelmere Signet Ring. There is the ABS, which is an Armadil Battle Staff, the BBC, which is not just a British broadcasting company, it is actually the Blightbound Crossbow and not what you guys were thinking. Cinders, which is the Cinderbane Gloves, which will poison your target. We have the Grim, which is a Grimoire, which is a pocket slot item you get from Solak. And then you have Nox, which is a term referred to noxious weaponry. So you got Nox Longbow, Nox Scythe, and the Nox Staff. Now there's also many other items in the game, like SOS for Staff of Sliske, and you could go on and on and on and on. I thought these were the most common ones, the most ones that you're going to hear more often and go, what the frick does that mean? But there's tons. There really is so many items. If I've forgotten any of the major ones, you'll have to just let me know. Moving on, we have boss names. Now, again, we're just going to talk about what people call this and then show the boss and explain what the boss is. We're not going to go too in depth with this. First of all, we have ROTS. This is Rise of the Six, the stronger version of the Barrows Brothers boss. Then we have Rax, which is short for Araxi or Araxor, depending which one you want to refer to. This is also where the Nox weapons come from. Then we have ED 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is Elite Dungeon 1, 2, 3, and 4. Or you have their respective names, the Temple of Amnishi, the Dragonkin Laboratory, or we have the Shadow Reef. Then we have the Undercity as well, but people pretty much just call this Zami. This is because Elite Dungeon 4 leads to the Zamorak boss, and most people just skip the actual dungeon. Next up, we have AOD, which is the Angel of Death, the upgraded version of Nex. We have the BSD, which is the Blackstone Dragon, one of the bosses in Elite Dungeon 2. The KK, which is the Calphite King. KQ for the Calphite Queen, and KBD for the King Black Dragon. We have the QBD, which is the Queen Black Dragon, and then we have the Daggers for the Dagon Kings, and Kera for Kerapak. It's probably also worth mentioning anytime you hear a boss name and the letters HM or NM next to it, you're referring to the hard mode version or the normal mode version. There's a few of the bosses that also have shorter names, but they're pretty obvious on what they are because they're very, very, very close, and so I didn't include them. We're going to finally end this video on something to do with MTX. The first section we talked about MTX, this is microtransactions, and then there's also some that go with this as well. One of them being TH. This is the treasure hunter system, which you'll know what treasure hunter is at this point. Even if this is your first day, you know what treasure hunter is. Then of course there is FOMO, which is not just a RuneScape term. This is fear of missing out, very often used in the promotions in the game. There is BXP, which is bonus XP that you receive from the treasure hunter stars, and other ways of getting them in game as well. And that's pretty much it in terms of the microtransactions, but I figured it was worth covering really quickly. And then at the end of the video, I figured we would include some that are like special mentions or final mentions that are definitely worth mentioning because you will hear them, but didn't really have a category. So the first one is going to be bank. Now, not just referring to the actual RuneScape bank, but in terms of I made bank today, or I have absolute bank, which just means you've got loads of money or you made loads of money. Next up is the word dry. You're going to hear people say, I've gone so dry at this boss, or I'm so dry on this drop, or anything like that. It just means you haven't had anything in a hell of a long time and you should have had it by now. You'll often see the letters GL being thrown around. It just means good luck. Probably know this just from normal life stuff. And then the letters GZ, which means grats. You'll see this in your clan chats and stuff anytime anybody gets an achievement, and if you don't, then you need a new clan. And finally, you'll see the term merch thrown around. Merch is basically when you buy items on the Grand Exchange, expecting them to go up in price, and so you're investing and merchanting those items to try and make a profit. Again, there's many other terms in this game that people use and players use, so I'm sure I've missed some out that you're thinking, these need to be on this list. Leave them in the comments, let me know what you think. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please also subscribe to the channel. And other than that, I'll catch you on the next one. See you later, guys. Bye.